As followers of God, we're called to challenge people to do the right things. First of all, challenge ourselves to stay on the path that God has set out for us, but also call out what's wrong and try to lead others to do what's right in the name of God. And in 2 Samuel 11 and 12, it gives us a story of King David, the king of Israel, staying back at home while the rest of his troops are out fighting, which isn't typically normal to do. And he catches eyes for Bathsheba, lustful eyes for the wife of Uriah, one of his soldiers that was actually out fighting at this point in time. And so he sends for her and sleeps with her. And after this, you would think King David would feel bad about it, sleeping with one of his friends, one of his soldiers' wives. Doesn't, keeps going on about his business. And it eventually comes out that Bathsheba's pregnant. And at first, David doesn't know what to do. He's kind of in panic mode. And so he calls for Uriah to come back home so that this way Uriah would sleep with his wife so that he could claim that is his kid and not King David's. Well, Uriah's faithful to the army, faithful to Israel, and says, I have to keep fighting. I have to keep doing what I'm going to do. So because of this, King David sends a note to the general saying, put Uriah in the front line and send the rest of the troops back, basically allowing Uriah to get killed and calling for him to get killed. Even after this, David still feels no tugging on his heart, no regret, no remorse for what he did. And so God sends Nathan. Nathan means gift. And so when God sends Nathan to David, he tells him a parable. This is in 2 Samuel 12, 1 through 15. And the parable is about a rich man and a poor man. And he goes on to say that the rich man has, a lot of sheep, a flock of herd, while the poor man has one lamb. The poor man has one small lamb that he cares for with his whole life. He takes care of it, and it is basically his whole life because that's all he has. And so a traveler came along to the rich guy trying to get a sheep or any of his cattle, and the rich man didn't want to give up any of his sheep. So he goes and steals the poor man's cattle. And while Nathan's telling this story to King David cuts him off and says, this guy's got to be killed. The rich man's obviously in the wrong. And Nathan says, you are the rich man. You are the one that did this. In other words, Nathan came out from God to challenge David to think about it. Even without calling him out with it for his own actions, to turn David completely away from him, he gave him a story that was relatable to the same thing that David did, so that David saw it from a different perspective and was able to see that what he did was wrong. This allowed David to realize and repent and turn to God, as he did in Psalm 51 later in the Bible. And so, going off this message, we all need to challenge. We all need to challenge each other as Christians, as followers of God, and everyone in this world to be better. Because the popular thing is to sit back while everyone else is doing what they think is right, whatever they're doing to make them happy, instead of doing the right thing and following God. And just because of the inevitability of sinning doesn't mean that we should fall victim to it and submit to the sin happening. We should still be trying to fight that and challenging each other to do the right thing. And so this transfers over to many things when talking about spirit-led success, not just in the faith like we talked about with King David being challenged by Nathan, but transferring it over to football and sports. Playing at Michigan previously, now at Missouri. The best teams that we had were the ones that the accountability was the highest. When the culture wasn't afraid to call people out for doing the wrong things and try to lead them into doing the right things. And that was when we were able to win the national championship as a team, because we weren't afraid of calling out the bad things and putting in place the right things. Even in life, the way you lead your family, the way you are with your wife, the way you are with your community, building each other up and challenging each other. Because it is the ability to challenge others that will then make you want to be the best. And not being afraid, just like the rest of the world right now. The world's so afraid of challenging others because they're all doing things that want to make them, or they're all doing things that they think leads to happiness, that leads down the wrong paths. So I think this is very important that we need to think about challenging people to do the right things, challenging people to turn away from sin and really reflect upon things. Even if you're not just calling it out like Nathan did. He didn't just call out David so that David would turn away from him. He gave David a relatable story so that David could see from another perspective that what he did was wrong, and this made David turn to God. Thank you, guys.